Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another day, another album. It is a brand new day today, so let's go see. What album we talking about? So today we're talking about the most recent full album release from Griselda affiliate Armani Caesar, The Liz 2. I can actually thank TikTok for putting me onto Armani Caesar, as I saw her and this album put on a few creators' most underrated artists list, and just the prospect of a feminine take on the trademark Griselda sound, that caught my attention in itself. This album mostly sticks to that format and makes for a very unique experience in the already star-studded Griselda crew. This album is also a sequel to the original Liz, and the Liz 1 is a more cohesive listen, but in this re-listen to the sequel for this review, I find improvement in quality throughout the track list. Throughout many of the coke-lace bars and boom-bap beats on the Liz 2 is a lot of underlying talent that makes Armani Caesar stand right next to the big three of Griselda, and even surpassing them in certain ways. The opening track is an intro of a clip of what sounds like an old TV show and a conversation about jewels, which is pretty on brand for the opulence that Griselda often raps about. The first full song is Paula Deen, which definitely delivers on classic Griselda production with a simple sample loop and bars on bars from Armani that really show her in her brag rap bag. The energy she carries into this track even outshines the feature from the head honcho of Griselda itself, Westside Gunn, even with a solid verse on his part. And while I know that Westside is capable of better features, this track does do a great job of establishing this as Armani's album, which I think is best for everyone involved on this track. Diana is the best song on this great album, and while it is a shame that it starts so high so early, everything about this track is just done right. The beat is smooth and noir, continuing the Griselda sound with touches of instrumental beauty in the bells. Armani is rapping like the baddest bitch who ever lived, and sounds gorgeous while rapping about fucking him like a stanko. Even the feature from Kodak Black is surprisingly good. His voice is kind of an auditory whiplash, and he takes a few seconds to find his flow in these bars, but after a few lines in, he really does a good job of keeping the feel of the song, even standing out on the album, although I will say it is entirely vibe-based because he's not the greatest lyricist, and the ending does run a little bit long, but Armani's singing does avoid it from feeling long to me. Skit is the next track, and you'll never guess what it is. That's right, a 10-minute lecture on Hegelian dialectics. Seriously, though, the song features a great gospel sample that I wish was just its own song, or even just a longer instrumental interlude. Mel Gibson is luckily not Armani going full yay.
Every human being has something of value that they brought to the table, especially.
But another boom bap banger with continued Griselda vibes and an intimidating intro that really sets the tone well as she delves back into coke rap. This song really shows that she can stand, walk, and run on her own lyrically, which is pretty true considering the fact that she had a lengthy career before linking with Griselda in the first place. I personally have not heard any of those older albums yet, but if any of y'all have, be sure to let me know which ones I should check out. $100 Hiccup continues the luxurious coke rap energy with another great verse from Armani. She always opens her songs with fire, and this is no exception with her Pusha T-like performance through the eyes of a coke-dealing femme fatale. Benny the Butcher and Stove God Cooks both feature on this one, and while Stove God's verse is alright, Benny the Butcher delivered on this track. I've never actually been a huge fan of Benny, but this may have been the best verse I've yet to hear from him, even just based on the chemistry between him and Armani on this track. A great feature. Survival of the Littest has some very noisy production that kind of reminds me of Clipping, which is always good for me because Clipping is amazing, but I can definitely understand if that noise is a turnoff for most. Armani continues to carry on this track with quality bars and confident delivery, and there isn't much to say about this track that isn't best experience. The outro from Westside Gun is also a nice touch. Queen City has a very interesting beat and more great singing from Armani, but the mixing is boosted to hell and back. It does make the track a more difficult listen, at least until the great lo-fi instrumental outro. But it does all even out to be a pretty alright track. The guitar loop on Liz Claiborne Jr. 1 goes much harder than I remember it. It reminds me of MF Doom a la Born Like This if he dealt coke. Armani's delivery and confidence continue to be solid, but definitely starts to set some album fatigue in by this point. The highlight of the song is the beat switch though, and it definitely finishes a lot stronger in part 2 than it starts in part 1. Meth and Mary was the point I started realizing how noisy most of this album actually is, and how heavy it is on the distortion. This song is a bit more pop than most of the album, and while it's not necessarily bad, it's also not particularly special for the album. And it's also another rap love song, and I think I've realized between this and that I think it's just the jarring shift from hot girl shit to I love my mans that doesn't always quite sit right with me. Very few can pull it off, but I wouldn't say this is an example of it being pulled off. The beat on Ice Age knocks a lot harder than a lot of the album and has a great live performance energy with some of the best flows on the album. The lyrics continue to meet the high bars set throughout the track list and feels like a refresher here from the previous song. Armani has the Griselda quality of finding interesting and unique ways to ostensibly just talk about a few things, for this album being mostly drug dealing, money, and being a bad bitch. First Wives is where the quality does begin to take a dip on the album though. I've liked a lot of the noisier elements of this album so far, but this song's mixing is just too much. I thought my headphones I had just bought were broken, but no, the song really is just that blown out. The saxophone sounds like a vaporwave song, and while the singing is good, the lyrics are just not. They're just not there on this one. Big Mood has a tonal whiplash of an opener, but it does feel like a kind of continuation or outro of the previous track, and a much better one at that. The instrumental especially improves with a haunting beat and more fire from Armani that makes me wish this track was longer. Because honestly, this track could have been longer, and maybe the last song could have not existed, and we'd live in a slightly better world. El Burro is another killer sample on the beat, with some stronger vocal performances from Armani about how indeed, niggas are indeed not shit. Fuck. About how niggas ain't indeed shit. Which is absolutely facts. She's back in her usual bag, but with the last few songs feeling like a much more earned moment of freedom. I'm not sure if the last few songs are meant to be a trilogy, but it reads well as one. Convoy the Machine also comes in and does what he does best, this time taking the lyrical perspective of the guy that Armani is rapping about for another solid feature to complete all the features from the big three of Griselda. Also, the outro about being a black woman in America is a fucking mood. Try being trans on top of it. Extra hard mode. Fucking fuck a contra code. Some other shit. God, I'm gonna cut that. That Moneymaker brings back a more pop rap sound, and it does sound okay, but loses a lot of the impact of a traditional Griselda song. The flows are solid. Even for the length of the album, I am starting to feel some fatigue at this point. When I was writing this review, I was just starting to get tired and kind of wanting to wrap up the album. It's not a bad song, but this song was where I began to notice it. Snowfall puts us back into the soulful samples, with the sample being distorted, but this production doesn't quite serve Armani's voice as much as it thinks it does. It's a decent song and an interlude into the closer, but I do wish we had gotten a rapped verse on this one, especially for the whiplash that is the next song. The closer, Psych, is a total change up, as we're just doing trap rap now. Definitely on a southern vibe from the hook to the hats and the bouncy 808s. The verse from Beat King that kind of reminds me of Gucci Mane. Okay, this is kind of weird thing to me, but is it weird when like a male rapper comments on how hot their collaborator is on the album if they're on a track with a woman? Like if one of my features on my next album coming out probably today said that, I'd have some questions at least. Like, What do you mean by that?
What do you mean by that?
Armani going Megan Thee Stallion isn't bad, but it's probably the most derivative performance and a weird choice of a closing track, especially when the Griselda tag comes in after the end. This whole track is just bizarre all around. It's not bad, but it's very weird. And even with the weird ending, this is another album that is a lot better than I remember it being. Armani kills it throughout every bar she spits and sings mostly solid with great features throughout its runtime. It's a bit weaker at the end, but still a great time and one that I enjoyed and I'm thankful that I went back to. The Liz 2 by Armani Caesar is an 8 out of 10 and currently sits at number 189 on the list. Be sure to let me know your favorite Armani Caesar song in the comments, and I'll see y'all for the next review. Pieces.